Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My name is André Calero Valdez. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues Martina Ziefle and Katrien Verbert. I'm a senior researcher at the Human-Computer Interaction Center at RWTH Aachen University. And as you've already heard, this is about HCI for recommender systems, the past, the present, and the future. But let's first start at looking at the past. Recommenders have come a long way, and so have also their interfaces. This is the example of a group lens interface. This is a Mac, I like that. The next thing I want to show you is André, which is an approach to recommending restaurants. It's based on case-based reasoning, and to be honest here, the internet looked like that 16 years ago, so it's not a choice in design. But from this, we have come further to designs like this from taste weights, where you have interactive visualizations, where you can interactively choose what you want to see, and then some graph-based visualizations that, in this case, is Peer Chooser, a movie recommender, which is based on trust-based recommendation. And another example is Talk Explorer by Verbert et al., which is a recommender that recommends talks at a conference to you by combining multi-agent based recommenders. So you have various recommenders, and they combine in showing you what talks you might want to be interested in. So not only have the interfaces come a long way, we also, if we look at how the algorithms evolved, we see that the early research mostly focused on accuracy. So we have early research on these RMSE, so root mean square error, F measures precision recall, ROC curves, and basically anything that relates to signal detection theory. But it didn't take long, so 10 years ago, McNee had their paper Beyond Accuracy, which shifted the focus to other areas of interest, for example, stuff like user control or transparency. And now we also have user-centered evaluation frameworks by Poe et al., for example, and we have a current review by He et al., who investigated different interactive visual recommender systems and showed that most of them relate to transparency as a central measure of what they want to achieve. So it seems like the community has been following the advice of McNee from 2006, and this leads us to where recommender systems are right now. And we must say recommenders are pretty much everywhere, not everywhere, but in many of the applications and in many of the domains, we have recommender systems in e-commerce, tourism, information retrieval, e-learning, people recommendation, group recommendation, we've just learned of search, media, and communications. And there are some recommenders that are typical to what you would expect, like on the right-hand side, it's the German version of Amazon, and it recommends if I want to buy an iPhone 6, it also recommends that I should buy protective cases and maybe warranty, and also a Samsung Galaxy S7, which is interesting because the explanation says people bought this along with their iPhone, so I kind of doubt that, but okay. The other thing is recommender systems that are not obviously recommender systems, like, for example, how Google gives you recommendations on what you might have wanted to look for as a recommendation, because I on purpose misspelled recommender system here and gave me the right answers, and also what people have been asking about the term recommender system. The question is now, where are we going with this? We've looked at articles and reviews in the Scopus database and entered the term recommender systems in there, and we see that there's an increasing interest in the topic of recommender systems. If you look at the articles, they have been steadily increasing. Until 2015, there's a slight dip there. And we've had two surges in reviews, one in 2005 and another one in 2012, I think. And the question now is, what is this research? What has been done in which area? And to answer this question, we tried to do a further bibliometric analysis, and the idea was we downloaded all the metadata from the Scopus database that matched the term recommender system from the computer science area, which interestingly doesn't find stuff like tapestry, because the term recommender system wasn't used before a certain point in time. And thus we retrieved 9,432 articles and reviews, applied bag of words model, stop word deletion, we stemmed the words and then used common phrases and n-gram detections, and we separated this whole corpus into 18 corpora for each of the individual years, for which we then applied TF-IDF, so we got the relative importance frequencies for the terms for each of these years, and manually filtered them by merging synonyms starting from the top. And then we looked at the list of the most frequently used terms, and we handpicked 10 HCI terms and 10 relatively more algorithm terms, and saw how their frequencies turned out. Okay, this graph is now not in color. It should be in color, which makes it hard to read. So, okay, the transfer from Mac to PC still doesn't seem to work. We have the left column here, which are HCI related terms, and on the right-hand side, we have algorithm terms. And in this graph, if you start from the bottom, you have algorithm-related terms, and at the top, you have HCI-related terms. And what you can see is that in the beginning, when we didn't have so many articles, you see that there's more changes in the data, and after 2005, we have a more stable proportion of the data, which coincides with when we had the surge in reviews in 2005. And this is when also, if we look at the upper part of the graph, we see that this was a time when HCI became more important in the corpus of data. And you should take a look at the picture in the paper, because it's in color, it's a lot easier to identify. And after that, we also see that HCI became, in relation to the HCI terms, less important. We also see the dawn of matrix factorization in 2007, and two aspects that we wanted to focus on, that is affective computing and risk-related. So the question is, what are the points of interest that we can see in this graph? And looking at the most cited reviews from this area, we see that in 2005, the topics were adaptive recommender systems and user model, and in 2009, it was about machine learning and user focus. So HCI and algorithms both have always been important for the field. The question that we now ask, if we want to look into the future, what can we do with the insights that we now have? And we believe that some of the HCI topics that are important are underrepresented. And in particular, we think that stuff like user control can have more research done too, in particular in relation to privacy, so stuff like adaptive privacy or differential privacy. K-anonymization might be interesting, but also insights from visual analytics, how to actually control a visualization and how to transfer that to a recommender system can be important. We think that recommender systems can be more adaptive to the human factors, so to the user diversity of knowledge, to the diversity of expertise, to the diversity of interests, and intent can be more important, but there has also been some work on that. Effective computing can be a powerful new model to get insights into more implicit feedback, and there's this dissertation by Rabal from 2013 which provides which sensor data could you possibly use in usability research. And then also new domains are interesting, and we figured out uncertainty and high-risk domains might be interesting, so something like finance and health, and there was a health recommender workshop here, so I think the topic has already picked up a little bit. But with these new areas that we can explore, there come new challenges, and with new areas such as big data, deep learning, and causal statistics, and we also have new interaction paradigms like virtual reality, augmented reality, and ambient interfaces. They bring along new challenges that are particular for analyzing the interaction in this regard. So how do we relate to privacy when looking at facial expressions? How do we relate to privacy with a health status? Data security is important, but also robustness. And we think some approaches that we can do here are participatory designed privacy trade-offs, and to incorporate cultural effects and have a more deeper look at the ethical implications of recommender systems. Okay, this concludes my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. And I'm, of course, delighted to see more HCI and recommender systems. I'm curious if from what you've looked at, you have a sense as to where this is coming from. How much of this is driven by the research community itself? Because we know there was an influx of machine learning people and people who were, frankly, algorithmicists. And how much of it is shaped by the sort of industry demands that are coming? This is a community that's always been a pretty good balance, and is it industry that's seeing that the human factor is more important to successful recommender systems, or is it researchers coming to that on their own, or some interesting mix?
we don't have real data on this, so it's hard to, I can just give my intuition. And I would argue that in the earlier days, probably some of the changes came from the researchers, so what they suggested, so what McNee said, going in a different direction was quite impactful. But then one thing that we also argue is that looking for new directions might not come from the field itself, but also looking for what is going on in other fields and see how they might relate to this field. And stuff like deep learning is apparently a big trend. So of course there will be something that relates to recommender systems. And so a new way of trying to investigate this is look at other fields, look at other areas that do not have recommender systems as a topic, and see if there's similar distributions of the terms over the time, and see whether there's whether they have been before us or after us.
Hi, Dan Cosley from Cornell and NSF. So one of the cool things about RecSys I'm discovering as a first-time attendee here is that there's a lot of industry attendance, right? And if you, I don't know if you talk to or have some feel for what this would look like if you were sort of embedded in an industry context from, you know, work you've done with industry or people you've been talking with them. Because it'd be interesting to see if they see it similarly, if there'd be a very sort of different set of concerns.
I can't really say that we have that much contact with industry, because I come from a field where we do publication recommendation to researchers, and that in a very closed scenario. And interestingly, we have one thing that we did is a visualization that recommends articles by showing how they're connected to the keywords that are used in them. And there seems to be a growing interest in R&D areas of companies that want to have similar technologies. So recommendations of what are the rising trends that we need to have as knowledge within our company. So from that area, yes, but in the other direction, I cannot say anything.
Could you put some of the same techniques on patents?
Probably yes, but good question. Need to think about that. Okay, thank you very much.